Re 0, Arc 7, Chapter 57, Can't Live Wiser.
He was within a bleak, dark space, swaying, wandering, being tossed about, being violated. It was as if his four limbs, along with everything from his neck up, had been separated from his torso, each of those parts at different places, floating, drifting, rocking, being fiddled with. His memory was terribly hazy as to what had happened and what was occurring. Everywhere was pitch black, leaving him to wonder as to why he had been thrown into such a completely empty space. Nothing came to mind. There was no possible reason for him to be trapped in a place such as this, his head and limbs detached, and floating aimlessly. If that were the case, there would be no pretext as to why he had to be in a place like this, in the first place. I love you. Every time a thought of the sort flashed across his mind, a faint voice that restrained him from thinking reached his ears. The voice was hard to hear, be it because it was faint, or simply because it was distant. But it was an impassioned voice that instinctively made him want to listen carefully to it, to lean his head in that direction so that he could hear it. I love you. I love you. I love you. Every time he heard that voice, the thoughts he'd had till that moment would be reset, returned to zero. The matter of which option was correct, of whether it should be called bothersome or unavoidable, was unclear. However, with the repetition of that over and over again, a novel issue came into being. Could somehow something be done about the distance of that audible voice? I love you. 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 As if to interrupt even that notion, the lines from that faint, pleading voice increased. That was counterproductive, however. Since desiring to hear that voice, to be with the owner of that voice, was the pretext for the birth of that thought, for him to attempt to reach one, starting from zero. Henceforth, someone, with his limbs and head detached from his torso, he was unable to move, unable to do anything himself. Ergo, he would prefer to rely on the help of those around him, those who would seemingly be able to do something about this situation. Did someone, anyone, who could help him exist, someone who could be capable of lending him a hand, even in such a hopeless situation? Was there someone who had treated him well? If that someone arrived alongside him, surely, so would the solution. Based on that, for the sake of reaching the voice reverberating from so far away, he would extend his hand. Albert, oh? That was quite the spirited blow just now. That instant, a large and potent roar echoed through the air, the tremors traveling across the ground and reaching the two men in the traveling inn. Outside the window, a huge black shadow ran rampant, slowly eroding the demon city from its center outwards, taking it into itself, digesting it, turning it into something not of this world. It was, with certainty, the worst nightmare dreaded by every being in the world, reminding everyone of exactly that at a single glance. It was an embodiment of the end, and the one to comprehend the horror brought about by the end of life, with their own skin, or rather, to know it with their soul, more so than anyone else, was Al. Abel and Medium, among others, were currently on the move to defuse the situation. Instead of joining them, he was crouching here, holding his shaking head in his hand, in this predicament. How on earth could he have said that he would follow them and help them? I am. Had he followed them only to fully realize how powerless he was? That being the case, for what reason was he, in the first place, doing? Albert, good grief, here I am, hurrying my ass back, and all I find here's just one young and scared shitless on the ground? Well, it'd be a problem if His Excellency were here as well. Albert, but Kafma's fighting that thing, isn't he? Does that mean that His Excellency ordered him to do it, and has no intention of running away? Do you know? Having spoken so, Albert walked up to him, sending a question his way. The small old man cracked the bones in his neck and bent down to look into Al's face, the latter crouching down. His brain, numbed by fear, barely assimilated the contents of that question. Vincent, the absent false emperor, had reached some kind of agreement with Abel, and Al. He's with a lil miss called Tanza. Albert, Tanza, you mean that dear girl? I dunno what he's thinking, at this point. His Excellency's a lil short on words, you know. Would be nice if he'd left a note 'bout what he's gonna do. Al, why you're, Olbart, yeah? Olbart's expression formed a frown as he stood up, hearing Al speak. Not wanting to let that monstrous old man distance himself even a bit, Al used his trembling tongue and throat to compose his words. Olbart had returned to this place, but what would he do after this? Al, you're gonna fight that thing, aren't you? Olbart, oi, don't be stupid. Al, huh? Al was stunned by Olbart answering as if he had nothing to do with the situation. Then, as Al stared on, stock still in front him, Olbart pointed out the window. Olbart, nah, got it at first glance. That thing's pretty darn bad. I've got my right hand taken away, too, so I don't want to do anything so dangerous. Al, Olbart, the reason I came back here's that I gotta get His Excellency out if he's stayin' here without a care. If he's not here, we need to find him and get him out of there. Do you happen to know where His Excellency went with that dear girl? Asked by the ever-aloof Olbart, Al simply denied it with a shake of his head. It was not a lie, but a fact. Most of the exchanges between Abel and the others that had taken place at Traveller's Inn after that black shadow engulfed and flooded the Crimson Lapis Castle did not remain in his memory. With some difficulty, he only remembered that Kathma had flown out as ordered, and that Vincent had left accompanied by Tanza. And that afterwards, Abel had left an useless Al behind, with medium concerned about Al until the end. That was all. Olbart, we're in serious trouble then, if so. Looks like this town's bunch have been motivated by the Foxgirl's command, and it's getting harder and harder to find His Excellency. I don't want to stay at this absolute cock-up for too long. Al, HKW, what do you mean by that? No way, you're running away? As he felt his train of thought reaching an unbelievable conclusion, Al's voice cracked. Faced with Al's astonished look, Olbart shrugged his shoulders and voiced, calmly, what else can I do? Olbart, don't feel I can do anything about that thing. What's important to me's my life and my dream. I don't see any reason to stay. Al, the Emperor. You gotta protect the Emperor, old man. Olbart, the fact that His Excellency's thinking and acting on his own means he's doing what's best for himself. If he thinks he's got my help here, he doesn't get me either. That's why him being called the wise emperor's also a crying shame. Al, oh, Olbart, here's some advice for you better run away too. You won't get anything by risking your life here. Meanin', the one who lives wiser wins. Olbart's philosophy, something that blended the deadly Volekir-style iron-blooded code with the fact that his life as a shinobi had been long, was bloody and rock-solid. This was something that could not be changed, no matter what an outsider such as Al said. No, most likely, Olbart's thinking could not be challenged by anyone other than Olbart. No one should allow others to dictate and distort one's life. For that reason, this man, Olbart Uncle Ken, reigned as the strongest shinobi. He was a shinobi who had been perfected with him not holding anything as precious, or having anyone to whom he devoted his heart. No emphasis had been placed on the title of general, on the position of shinobi head honcho, or on the sense of duty to protect the emperor. Not freedom, but lawlessness. The world's greatest outlaw, those were his true colors. That idea would not budge. It could not be swayed. Not by anyone. Then, having a back and forth regarding his ideology here would yield naught. Al, strongly, firmly grating his molars together, Al lowered the arm he had been pressing against his ear. The audible booming roars and rumblings of the earth, the cries of the residents of Demon City as they confronted the Black Shadow, echoed like the scene was a depiction of hell on earth, shaking Al's heart. His heart was about to fracture. His mind was about to shatter. His soul was close to dispersing. But I haven't yet. If they haven't, Al, old man, let me ask you one thing. Olbart, what is it? Al, that black mass of shadows has got something to do with bro, doesn't it? Gritting his teeth to the point of tasting blood, Al assembled words, hiding the trembling in his voice for only a moment. Al's deathly resolve as that was concealed behind the cloth mask. Olbart perhaps understood so from the expression of the former's eyes, gone unseen, and from his tone. Bringing his left hand to his own goatee, he spoke. Olbart, oh, right. To me, it looked like the shadows came out of the boy. Al, Olbart, After hearing that, have you decided what you're gonna do? Closing his eyes, Al masticated what Olbart had just told him. It was something he already knew. Natsuki Subaru was beneath that black shadow. No, Natsuki Subaru was at the center of everything. If so, in that case, Al had to raise his face with the resolve of having his molars broken. If Natsuki Subaru was there, Aldebaran needed to follow him. Al, you told me to live wiser, old man. Olbart, yeah, right. That's what I believe, Al, but I don't agree with it. Old man, your way of life ain't a wise one, it's a cunning one. I don't wanna be a cunning adult. Boom, a powerful noise was heard, not from outside, but originating from right beside Al. He had slammed his own fist into the floor, the pain and momentum of the slam raising his body. He rested his uplifted body against the wall, having somehow managed to stand up, knees trembling, heart frightened, spiritually wounded all over, even though he had not even fought, and yet, Al, this ain't the time to sit around. Won't be able to look my parents in the face if I do that, will I? Standing up with his hand on the wall, Al bared his teeth inside his mask. Hearing of his dogged determination amidst blood-curdling cries, Olbart raised a long, bushy eyebrow. Sending a sharp look out the window, closing one eye to Al's howling back. Olbart, your enthusiasm's good and all, but you really think we got a chance to win against that thing? Al, no fucking way. No one can win against that. Even if I tried 10,000 times, I couldn't win. Winning against that thing. Only Natsuki Subaru can do that. With a large swing of his arm, Al turned around with a bang on the windowsill. Looking at the monstrous old man directly in the face, Al stepped forward, both his eyes blazing in a conflagration. Al, old man, Olbart, Wohoa, you're getting fired up. I'm just gonna tell ya, if you want me to lend you a hand, I got a refuse. Al, I don't want it. Instead, just turn me back, you shitty geezer. Olbart, Al, if you want time to run away, then I'll make some. So give me my authority back. Stretching his stubby right hand straight out, Al bellowed that towards Olbart. Olbart's breath caught in his throat as he heard Al's cry, a mixture of a bestial roar, of a mournful lament, and of a fiery sense of purpose. Then, giving a slow sideways shake of his head, the monstrous old man, Olbart, well, if you're gonna go tar the trouble of playin' the martyr, I can't argue with ya. The boy won the game in the first place, so I gotta keep my promise. Al, bro, won? Olbart, that's right. That boy actually caught me in a game of tag. It was a real big deal, in my opinion. As Olbart said this, Al went out to meet him face to face, Olbart greeting him with a wave of his left arm. Having heard what Olbart had to say, Al felt a single note of relief and admiration ring out over his pulse ticking like a bomb. At a time when even the sound of the wind caused Al to stiffen in fright, Subaru had carried out his task, going head-to-head with Olbart, and managing to ultimately pull off a win against him. Surely, having accumulated defeats that could not have happened merely once. Olbart, though, I just wanna hear one thing out of curiosity. Suddenly, a hoarse voice interrupted the beating of Al's heart, and he looked at the other man silently. Displaying his teeth, Olbart smiled towards the unwelcome look in the other person's eyes, as he gently placed his outstretched left hand on Al's chest, and then, Olbart, how do you intend to challenge an enemy you can't win against even if you try 10,000 times? Al, pipe down, you shitty geezer. I'll go and die, even if it's 1,000,000 times. Abel, the one who has inherited the commandment to prevent the great disaster, the one to become the new stargazer. The moment this was pointed out, Tarata's world was rocked, dramatically so. The great disaster's rampage was causing the demon city to shake, earthquake-like roars could be heard without end. But the reason for the illusion of collapse beneath her feet was not that, it was what the only masked man in front of her what Abel had pointed out which gouged her heart of hearts. Medium, star, gazer, standing by Tarata's side as to gently support her unsteady body, Medium muttered that unfamiliar term as if to confirm what it was. It was a term unknown to her, and one she did not need to know. In reality, had Tarata continued to live peacefully within her hometown in the forest as a simple member of the people of Shudrak, she would have never had any need to associate with it, even. But, Tarata, Medium, Abel Chin. I have no clue what's going on. What are you talking about? On behalf of Tarata, her voice quivering, Medium lashed out at Abel. She had been shrunk, yet she remained steadfast nevertheless, her thin chest puffed out as if to protect Tarata, as she glared straight at Abel. Medium, what's that stargazer thing you're talking about? Why is Tarata-chan becoming that, Abel? A stargazer is one who has taken on the role of foreseeing the future based on the alignment of the stars and their guidance. No, calling it a predestination, rather than a role, would be more accurate. Medium, are you putting it in such complicated words on purpose? Abel, that is not my intent. Abel, hearing Medium's words as she frowned and struggled to understand, gave a small sigh. After that, putting Medium aside, Abel called out to Tarata once more using her name, Tarata. Her shoulders hitched involuntarily. Abel, looking directly at her, spoke. Abel, the reason why I was ousted from the imperial capital in the first place is closely related to the stargazer. Tarata, you should be aware of that matter, right? Tarata, be by the matter, you mean, Abel, of course, that the downfall of the empire was foreseen. You knew that. That is why you wished to murder me in the Budim jungle. Tarata, HK. Tarata's cheeks tensed up, and she lowered her head due to Abel's matter-of-fact statement, crossing his arms. The shock of being called a stargazer nearly overshadowed the fact that Abel had pointed out something that could not possibly be overlooked. He had stated it with certainty. Tarata was the hunter of the jungle. Did she regret missing her opportunity to shoot him down? Put into words. Tarata, since when? Abel. Tarata, since when have you known I was after you? Medium. Tarata-chan? Face turned downwards, Tarata raised this question without being able to look Abel in the eye. Hearing Tarata's words, a voice of utter shock leaked out of Medium. Of course it did. From hearing her question, it was evident that she had no margin to deny Abel's pressure. It was a confession of the truth. Tarata had attempted to kill Abel with her archery. Abel, the stargazer's foreknowledge. Commandments are, for the most part, shared among fellow stargazers. It was to be expected that my pursuers would come at me after I escaped the imperial capital, aware of that commandment. In addition, Abel, that I would rely on the people of Shudrak, based on knowledge of the throne's mechanism, could be conjectured. In all probability, there is an assassin amidst the Shudrak. Tarata, Abel, I only obtained definite proof of the assassin's existence, however, when you targeted Natsuki Subaru, mistaking him for me. Hearing Abel's line of reasoning, Tarata grasped the hem of her clothes tightly. That was true. Tarata, living in one end of the empire, possessed no way of knowing the countenance of the Emperor of Wallachia. All she knew was that black hair and black eyes were characteristics of his outward appearance. Never would she have thought that multiple owners of such unusual features would appear in the forest on that day. At the same time, Abel, your reaction to seeing the two of us, me and that one, trapped in the village's cage, was remarkable. For a pawn of the observers, your nature is a far too honest one. Tarata, Abel, you accompanied me in both the capture of Garel and the journey to the demon city that followed, but you were not at all willing to follow the commandment. Why is that? Tarata, Abel, why do you refuse to obey that commandment? From what I have heard, a stargazer's predestination is not something one can resist even if they are aware of it. I do not believe you have the will to resist that predestination. Had she that sort of strong will, of self-discipline, Tarata would not have accompanied them on this journey in the first place. Abel's judgment was harsh, but correct. Correct enough to draw blood. Tarata did not possess the strength to abandon her own commandment. If that were possible, she would have abandoned a burden of the sort much sooner. For certain she knew that, if she did not obey that commandment, the great disaster would destroy the empire. Medium, oh my gosh. I don't get it at all. Tarata carried on in anguish, while Abel continued on in pursuit, sandwiched between the two, and yet kept out of the loop. Medium exploded. She glared at Abel with her blue eyes, spreading both her arms in order to shield Tarata behind her back. Medium, I don't know anything about Abel Chin being targeted, or that it was Tarata-chan who targeted Abel Chin. First of all, if Tarata had had her mind set on it, Abel Chin would have been killed by now. right? Abel, you, learn a little to watch your tongue. Medium, right? Abel Chin, can you run away from Tarata-chan? The shape of Abel's mouth took contours of loathing after Medium spoke her words filled with vigor. He could not deny her words. But doubts on this front had been posed to Tarata by Abel, already. In other words, just as Medium had stated, she could have done it if she wanted to, so why hadn't she? That was, Tarata, because, I couldn't find, a meaning to it. Abel. What reason do you require, beyond saving the empire from ruin? Tarata, I didn't even know that you were the emperor, or how you were chased out of the imperial capital. That's because, to me, as a stargazer, I am. The anguish that had been locked away at the back of her chest for so long finally began to overflow with the opening of her mouth, and what had unleashed the anguish she had been unsure of how to put into words for a long time, had been none other than Abel's hounding. But before she could clearly put it into words, Medium, no, a wide-eyed Medium exclaimed, and Tarata and Abel's attention quickly shifted upward. Right above, black darkness covered the building directly above where the three stood. No, that was not it. It was not just sable darkness spreading, but rather a huge black arm, endowed with 5 fingers. It stretched itself upright, then swung down on the building from directly above, as if attempting to smash the 3 people present at this place. No, as if attempting to grab them with its huge hand. Tarata, HK, Medium. Abel, the moment she witnessed its approach, all extraneous thoughts disappeared from Tarata's mind. The scene of verbal assault from just before vanished into thin air. Tarata moved as her instincts dictated, embracing Medium in front of her, carrying Abel on her shoulders, and leaping directly backward. With that, she attempted to escape the gargantuan black arm's range. Not enough, however, caught by the falling fingertips, they were helplessly snatched away from this world. I will not allow that to happen. However, just before the titanic arm reached Tarata and the others, a huge mass was wedged with great violence overhead, between the 3 of them and the giant arm. Tightly entangled in emerald green thorny vines, the castle walls had been torn apart and seized. With tremendous centrifugal force, it became a dome that protected the group of 3 in which Tarata was included, trying to intercept the falling giant arm. Naturally, the limb was not something that would be halted by anything of the sort. Once the huge black arm touched the wall, the latter came undone as easily as candy, disappearing in a second like a leaf being devoured by a winged insect. However, I won't tolerate any further disorder in my city. HK. A woman clad in a kimono dived right under the disappearing castle wall, the beast ears on her head all perked up, kicking her long legs upwards, propelling the wall towards the gargantuan arm. A wave of pressure broke through, beckoning the collapse of the building it focused on. However, the unfathomable might of the woman's kick caused the gigantic arm on the other side of the wall to bend, halting the erosion. But it only stopped for a moment. Still, that one moment was enough. Tarata, HK, we got through. Narrowly escaping the giant arm's range, her heels grinding into the ground, Tarata exhaled. Released from her arms, Medium and Abel also landed on the ground. The 3 of them looked up to see the building that had been their perch earlier being swallowed up by the shadows. Medium, why Yorna-chan is. Abel, she's safe. Though it looks like we are being pursued even more than we were a moment ago. Jerking his chin, Abel answered as Medium cast her gaze all around her with a worried look. At the place her glance was directed to, jumping around while being chased by the shadows running amok, was the kimono-clad woman who had just let loose a potent blow. Was she Yorna Miss Higya? That transcendent force was worthy of qualifying for the 9 divine generals. It was understandable that Abel would wish to have someone like her on his side. A person as powerful as her could easily accept a destiny that would determine the course of the world. Unlike Tarata, there would be no hesitation if the time came. Abel, you saved me once more. Tarata, as if seeing through Tarata's indecision, Abel examined the kneeling Tarata. She was unable to calm her breathing down, for reasons aside from her exertion immediately prior. However, Abel would spare no quarter to Tarata, either physically or mentally. Abel, had you not extended your hand, I could have lost my life without any effort on your part. And yet, you saved me. Was that because you cannot fulfill the commandment you have received without getting your hands dirty? Tarata, That's wrong, Abel. If so, how come? Your conduct is inconsistent with medium, but more importantly, thank you for the help, right? Once again, medium came to Tarata's rescue, rendered speechless after the accusation of inconsistent behavior. Medium, her beautiful golden hair disheveled, was thrusting her finger at Abel right before the latter's eyes. The difference in stature between the two was visible in her gesture, but even so, Medium did not let go or yield her claim. Medium, Abel-chan, you and I would have died if Tarata-chan hadn't saved us. No. We gotta thank her, first of all. Tarata-chan, thank you, Tarata, Medium, then, back on track. What's up with that, Abel-chin? What do you wanna have Tarata-chan do? Medium looked back and thanked her, then quickly turned to Abel. Her questioning was delayed somewhat by the exchange between Abel and Tarata, with the former sign that Medium could not keep up with her understanding of the situation. Abel, I already conveyed that to Tarata. I do not require that you understand. Medium, if I don't understand, I'll just keep disturbing you till I do, okay? How about that, Abel? In order to quell the great disaster, I must lose my life. That is the future the Stargazer has seen, and the commandment bestowed upon Tarata. Medium, I got no idea of what you mean. Why would that big black shadow calm down after Abel-chin's death? That's so weird. In response to Medium's persistent pleas, Tarata bit the inside of her cheek. Certainly, she could understand the foresight that the Empire would be spared from destruction as a result of fulfilling that commandment. How exactly would that be brought about? Tarata was unsure. However, that being pointed out only made Medium realize Abel's ruthlessness. Abel, is it not odd? But Tarata's conjecture was stalled by the echo of Abel's words that followed. Baring her teeth, Medium voiced out odd, in vehement protest. To which Abel, covering his mouth with his hand, once more repeated it, odd. Abel, Tarata, what is it? Abel, the commandment you have received, to take my life to spare the Empire from destruction. Are you certain of it? Tarata, being directed a question to again, hesitantly, Tarata nodded her head. She had been told that the commandment she was unable to execute was necessary, but after ascertaining this, Abel once more spoke. If so, Abel, would that not be what you know as destruction? Tarata, Abel, you know of the divination that a great disaster would hearken the destruction of the Empire. But you hold the belief that that thing, and the great disaster, are one and the same. Are you certain of that? With that question, Tarata's thoughts began racing, trying to discern its meaning. What could one call that entity that evoked dread and horror, the black shadow gradually spreading from the heart of the demon city, if not the great disaster? Time and time again, a nightmarish spectacle was displayed to her repeatedly, every night, a nightmare, urging her to not forget, over and over again brought Tarata visions of the coming doom. That thing was certainly a manifestation of that. However, Tarata, is that the great disaster or not? Abel, you have not obtained knowledge of it, is that so? Then perhaps some other stargazer has. Tarata, some other. After that sentence, Tarata's eyes began moving frantically. Although Abel had stated stargazers were connected to each other, Tarata was an exception. No, exception was not the correct word. To begin with, they were different from the get-go. That was why Tarata had no idea about the existence of other stargazers. Tarata, if she were to have an idea about that stargazer, it would be the person she had encountered just a few moments ago. Tarata, that delicate man who did not let go of his carefree attitude, that obnoxious person who had not even given his name, was so well informed that he had called Tarata the disgrace of Shudrak. He knew of Tarata's sin. Perhaps due to the connection between stargazers, what had he, the stargazer, said upon laying eyes on the great disaster? If she recalled correctly, the man had stated, Tarata, that it was outside his responsibility. Abel. Truly, was that what the stargazer said? I see. Medium, Abel-chin, hearing Tarata leaking that expression, dumbfounded, Abel nodded, then turned away, frowning her eyebrows at that. Medium wrapped around Abel as to go towards his front and peer into his face. And once she did, Medium's round eyes widened. Startled, the The reason for her surprise was evident in Abel's immediate reaction. Abel placed his palm on his own face covered by the Oni mask, and fixing his stare solidly on the heart of the demon city, where the great disaster, or rather, where the all-consuming jet-black mass continued its rampage. Abel, is the downfall of the empire something apart from the great disaster? With this murmur, Abel then cleared his throat slightly, letting out a short exhale. To Tarita, who was unable to see the expression on his face, it had nearly sounded like a laugh. Abel, if so, there is no reason for you to stumble along the way. I shall have you disappear from the board, you interloper.